In a world where charisma and controversy kind of collide,
Yeah.
how can you tell a visionary from a con artist?
Well, that's what we're going to try to figure out today.
Yeah, that's what we're tackling today
Exactly.
in our Grifter or Gifted deep dive.
Yeah.
We're going to unpack the story of Mina Chang,
Oh, yeah.
a former State Department official whose career trajectory has been, well, let's just say it's sparked a lot of debate.
Oh, absolutely. What's so intriguing about Chang's story is that it really raises some, fundamental questions about how we perceive success and influence, right?
Yeah.
Is it something that's earned through hard work and genuine accomplishment?
Right.
Or can it be manufactured through, maybe some clever self-promotion and
Yep.
maybe a bit of deception?
Exactly. And that's why Mina Chang is such a perfect case study for us.
Oh, yeah?
Think Fake Time magazine covers, a resume that's been called into question. We're diving deep into all of it.
Absolutely.
The big question we're grappling with is, was she a force for good in the world? Or was she more focused on building her own brand?
Yeah, and we've got a stack of sources to help us try to, untangle this. Articles from NBC News, The Hill, even The Cut, everybody's been buzzing about this.
So let's start with what we know about Chang's background. She founded a nonprofit organization called Linking the World, which focused on international development. She claimed to have worked in some pretty challenging places: Afghanistan, Myanmar, Haiti, Kenya.
On the surface, it sounds, pretty impressive, but here's where the red flags start to pop up. The IRS actually revoked Linking the World's tax-exempt status because they couldn't find any record of the organization actually doing charitable work.
Wait, hold on, seriously. That's a pretty big deal. The IRS doesn't just revoke tax-exempt status for no reason.
Yeah.
What does that tell us about Linking the World?
Well, it definitely casts a shadow of doubt over, Chang's claims about her nonprofit's impact. Without, proper documentation or evidence of charitable activities, it's really hard to assess the legitimacy of the organization.
Okay, so we've got some questions about her nonprofit work. But then things get even more interesting. Chang landed a pretty significant role at the State Department, becoming the Deputy Assistant Secretary for the Bureau of Conflict and Stabilization Operations.
And this is where things really start to kind of, unravel. Not only did this position come with a hefty $6 million budget, but Chang held it despite having no prior diplomatic experience. So
Yeah.
that raised eyebrows even before the deeper discrepancies in her resume came to light.
Yeah, let's talk about those discrepancies.
Right.
NBC News did some serious digging and found some inconsistencies between Chang's resume and her LinkedIn profile. She claimed to have a Harvard Business School degree and to have spoken at national political conventions. But, as it turns out, neither of those claims was entirely accurate.
It appears she attended a 7-week program at Harvard, not a full degree program. And while she may have attended events in the cities where political conventions were held, she didn't actually speak at the conventions themselves. So these discrepancies, while they might seem small, are really significant when you're talking about qualifications for such a high-level position.
And then there's the infamous Time magazine cover. I still can't believe the audacity of this. Chang actually had a fake Time magazine cover created with her face on it.
I know, it's wild.
The headline, "We Change the World, Modern Humanitarian in the Digital Age."
Crazy.
I mean, did you really think no one would notice?
It's almost too bizarre to believe, right?
Yeah.
But she did use this fake cover, and not just once, but repeatedly. It appeared in job interviews, presentations. She even showed it during a televised interview in 2017.
Wow. What I find so perplexing is that given all of this, Chang resigned from the State Department in November 2019,
Right.
but maintained her innocence throughout. She called the accusations against her a character assassination and criticized the State Department for not defending her. She even went so far as to say that the State Department was facing a, quote, toxic work environment and the worst and most profound moral crisis in its history.
Her resignation letter is really something. She didn't hold back, that's for sure. But it does make you wonder, is this a genuine response from someone who feels wrongly accused? Or is it a calculated attempt to deflect blame and control the narrative?
That's a question we're going to keep unpacking as we go deeper into Chang's story.
Sure.
So for you listening, what stands out to you so far? What pieces of this puzzle are you finding most intriguing? Okay, so we've established that there are some, serious questions surrounding Mina Chang's career.
Yeah.
But let's go back to that fake Time magazine cover for a second.
Oh, yeah.
It's just so wild to me.
I know.
It feels like something out of a movie, not real life.
I know, right? You really got to wonder what was going through her mind. Did she actually believe that she could get away with it, or was it like a calculated gamble?
And the fact that she used it repeatedly in job interviews, presentations,
Yeah.
even on television, it's almost like she was like daring someone to call her out on it.
Yeah, it's certainly a bold move, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And it ultimately backfired spectacularly when NBC News launched their investigation.
Right.
Their reporting was meticulous. They didn't just rely on hearsay, they dug deep, they contacted sources, and they really uncovered this, pattern of inconsistencies that just couldn't be ignored.
They really did some impressive investigative work.
Oh, yeah.
And it wasn't just the time cover. Remember those discrepancies in her resume and LinkedIn profile? NBC News found that Chang had inflated her credentials in several areas. For example, she claimed to have a Harvard Business School degree, but it turned out she only attended a 7-week program there.
That's right. And she also claimed to have spoken at, national political conventions. But again, NBC News found that she had only attended events in those cities, not actually spoken at the conventions themselves. So it's, a pattern of embellishment that's hard to dismiss.
So we have the fake time cover, the inflated resume, and the questions surrounding her nonprofit work.
Yeah.
All of this raises some pretty serious questions about Chang's integrity. But what's even more baffling is that she's never actually admitted to any wrongdoing. In fact, she's vehemently denied all the allegations against her.
Exactly. She's maintained that she's a victim of, a smear campaign and that the accusations are based on, innuendo.
Right.
She even went so far as to criticize the State Department for not defending her and for, fostering a toxic work environment. So it's a pretty strong defense, but does it hold up under scrutiny?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is Mina Chang a skilled manipulator who's just managed to convince herself of her own innocence?
Right.
Or is she genuinely a victim of circumstance?
This is where things get, really tricky. We've got these conflicting narratives, this he said, she said situation, and it's really up to us as critical thinkers to weigh the evidence, consider multiple perspectives, and try to, determine what the truth really is.
So let's dig deeper into some of those conflicting narratives. One of the key criticisms leveled against Chang is that her nonprofit, Linking the World, didn't actually do any real charitable work. The IRS revoked their tax-exempt status, which is a pretty big red flag. But Chang has maintained that her organization was legitimate and that they did make a positive impact.
Right. And she's pointed to testimonials from people who claim to have actually benefited from, Linking the World's programs. But those testimonials haven't been independently verified and they don't address the IRS's findings. So we're left with a lot of unanswered questions.
And it's not just about the lack of evidence. NBC News uncovered some pretty questionable practices at Linking the World. For example, they found that Chang had claimed to have helped train Afghan women to run for political office.
Right.
But when reporters contacted some of these women, they denied ever having met Chang or being involved with her organization.
That's a pretty, damning revelation. It suggests that Chang was not only exaggerating her accomplishments, but potentially fabricating stories altogether.
It also raises ethical concerns about exploiting, the stories of vulnerable people for personal gain.
Absolutely. Using, heart-wrenching narratives to build your own image while providing little to no actual support is a serious ethical breach.
So it seems like the evidence is kind of stacking up against Chang.
Yeah.
But I still find myself wondering, what was her motivation? Was she driven purely by ambition? A desire to just climb the ladder of success no matter the cost? Or was there something else at play?
Well, that's a question that, psychologists and behavioral experts have pondered for centuries. What drives people to deceive and manipulate? Is it a deep-seated insecurity, a need for validation, a belief that there's somehow above the rules?
Or maybe it's a combination of factors.
Right.
It's hard to say for sure. But what's clear is that, Chang's actions had real consequences. Her deception eroded trust, damaged reputations, and potentially undermined important work in the field of international development.
Absolutely. And it raises some, uncomfortable questions about our own society, about the way we celebrate success.
Right.
And the way we often turn a blind eye to deception, especially when it comes from those who are, charismatic and well-connected.
Okay, so we've seen how Chang's actions had this, ripple effect impacting individuals and organizations.
Right.
But her resignation from the State Department also sparked a broader conversation about the culture within that institution and the way it handles, allegations of misconduct.
Right. Her resignation letter was pretty scathing.
Yeah.
She didn't just quietly step down. She went out with a bang, accusing her superiors of abandoning her, failing to defend her against, the allegations, and allowing her to be subjected to a character assassination.
She even claimed that the State Department was experiencing a moral crisis, which is a pretty bold statement.
It is, and it raises some important questions about, the State Department's internal processes and whether they adequately protect their employees from, unfair attacks.
It also makes you wonder if there were people within the State Department who knew about Chang's fabrications, but chose to, look the other way.
That's definitely a possibility, and it wouldn't be the first time that something like this has happened, in a large bureaucratic organization. Power dynamics can be really complex, and sometimes people are just afraid to speak up for fear of retaliation.
So what are we left with?
Well,
We have a woman who achieved a high level of success,
right.
but it seems that much of that success was built on this foundation of lies. We have allegations of deception, manipulation, and exploitation. And we have a resignation that was more of a, dramatic exit
Yeah.
than a quiet departure.
It's a messy situation for sure, and it's one that definitely leaves us with more questions than answers.
So we've been unpacking this Mina Chang story, and it's clear that there's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
One thing I keep coming back to is the fact that she was able to rise so high in such a prominent organization like the State Department.
Right.
How does that even happen? Did no one see the warning signs?
Well, that's a question a lot of people have asked, and there's no easy answer, right? It's possible that some people within the State Department were aware of the inconsistencies in Chang's background,
Right.
but chose to overlook them, maybe due to political pressure or maybe a belief in her potential,
It also highlights this broader issue, right?
Yeah.
Like the potential for charisma and a compelling narrative to just overshadow, a lack of substance.
Yeah.
Chang was very good at presenting herself as this dedicated humanitarian, someone who's driven by a desire to make a difference in the world.
Yeah.
And that kind of image, that can be very persuasive,
Oh, absolutely.
especially when it's backed up by seemingly impressive credentials,
Yeah.
even if those credentials are later found to be, questionable.
It's a classic example of style over substance, right?
Yeah.
And it raises important questions about how we evaluate individuals, especially in positions of authority.
Oh.
Do we focus too much on appearances and not enough on actual accomplishments and integrity?
That's a really good point. We are often drawn to those who are, confident and articulate and who tell us what we want to hear.
For sure.
But those qualities don't necessarily equate to competence or ethical behavior.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to be, critical thinkers.
Yeah.
To look beyond the surface and
Yeah.
to evaluate individuals based on their actions and their track record.
Right.
Not just their charm or their ability to, spin a good story.
So what happened to Mina Chang after her resignation from the State Department?
Yeah.
Did she face any, legal consequences or professional sanctions?
As far as we know, she hasn't faced any criminal charges or, professional disciplinary action. It seems like she's kind of retreated from public life entirely, but that doesn't mean she's escaped unscathed.
What do you mean?
Well, her reputation has undoubtedly suffered irreparable damage. The allegations against her, the fake time cover, the inflated resume, all of that is out there
Right.
in the public domain, and it's really hard to imagine her being able to rebuild her career in any field that requires trust and credibility.
That's a good point. It's a reminder that even if you avoid legal repercussions, the court of public opinion can be just as powerful, if not more so. Your reputation is something you build over time, and it can be shattered in an instant.
That's right. And in the age of social media, news spreads so fast, and it's just very difficult to control the narrative once it's out there.
So where does this leave us? We've examined the evidence, explored the complexities of Chang's story, and discussed the broader implications.
Yeah.
But the central question remains, grifter or gifted?
Well, it's a question that, each listener will have to answer for themselves.
Right.
But I think it's important to remember that people are complex,
Yeah.
and they rarely fit neatly into, one category or the other.
Right.
It's possible that Chang was driven by a genuine desire to, make a difference in the world,
Right.
but that her ambition and her need for validation kind of led her down this path of deception and manipulation.
It's a cautionary tale, for sure. A reminder that even the most, talented and charismatic individuals can fall prey to their own ego and make choices that have devastating consequences.
Yeah, and it's a reminder that, we all have this responsibility to be vigilant, to question what we see and hear, and
Mhm.
to hold those in positions of power accountable for their actions.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up our deep dive into the life and career of Mina Chang. It's been uh, a fascinating and thought-provoking journey.
Absolutely. And if there's one thing I hope our listeners take away from this episode, it's the importance of integrity.
Yeah.
Strive to live your life in a way that aligns with your values, be honest with yourself and with others, and, build your success on a foundation of hard work, authenticity, and a genuine desire to, make a positive impact on the world.
Because at the end of the day, that's what truly matters. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Grifter or Gifted. We'll see you next time.